Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ventures podcast. This episode is all about starting a DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And if you've been following this show for a little while, I've actually had quite a number of episodes about DAOs, but this episode is with a subset of us, Mike, Priya, Jake, and I, a subset of us that are forming a new DAO called BanyanDAO. And in fact, we're merging in all of the other various little DAO experiments that we've been doing into this one DAO. So we welcome you to join us. That's BanyanDAO.xyz. I'll put the link in the show notes. But we talk about how we're forming to not only help each other learn Web3, but we have a particular season, a particular project. We're aiming toward an event in April to help train Web3 product managers. Meaning if you're a Web2 product manager, and you're interested in leveling up into Web3, we have an event for you. We talk about that in this episode, but we also talk about what is a DAO, how are we thinking about it, particularly in terms of compensation, in terms of jurisdiction issues, in terms of governance. It's a big conversation right now in the Web3 space, in the DAO space in particular. And so excited to be able to share this with you. If you're listening, you can also watch by visiting wclittle.com. There I'll have more extensive show notes to the things that we talk about today. If you're watching, you can also listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can just search for Ventures. So with that, please enjoy this conversation with Jake and Priya and Mike. All right, Mike, Jake, Priya, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So I wanted to have this episode, and I really appreciate the time that the three of you have taken out of your day to have it, because I've been writing and tweeting and podcasting about DAOs now, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, for 3-4 months. We've been following the space for quite some time, and there's been a lot of experimenting in good startup fashion, a lot of experimenting, a lot of what about this, almost like we're starting out at a video game and you're just exploring the map, right? Like what's over here? What's DAO House? What's DAO Stack? What's Colony? What's Coordinate? How do you deal with jurisdictions? How do you actually deal with governance? How do you incentivize people? All of these amazing questions. Before we dive into all of that, which I'm excited to do and talk about the DAO that the four of us and others are participating in, I'd love to just learn a little bit about the three of you. Mike, would you start and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sounds good. I've been on online communities since like the early 90s. Since I was a little kid. Like it started out with getting into roller coasters, and I was like messaging with adults from around the country that were into roller coasters on rec.rollercoaster. And so I've seen the progression of this happen. I got into mountain biking. I met the best mountain bikers in the world. I grew up in a church. I met everybody in the world through the church online. And then my career's been through this, right? Like I made my career on Twitter. And so DAOs all of a sudden are this like Pokemon evolution from Charmander to Charizard. And it's like, oh, wow, now do we not only have the ability to connect with each other, now we can actually like build something together. We can actually have a treasury together. We're in superpower mode now.
Love it. Jake?
Yeah, well, it's this journey has been fascinating. And I have to say that I have a huge bias for technology and the power that technology has to improve people's lives. Right. And I'm the prototypical person that's looking at Web3 because I'm so immersed into the Web 2.0 world. And I've been around long enough that I've seen the transition from packet software to cloud, from desktop to mobile, to the rise of gaming, etc. And I've seen the type of cycles that those technologies go into. And when I heard about Web 3.0 and all the underlying motivations behind it, and the technologies that are powering it, I was just all in. And the journey of learning thus far has been amazing. And the people that I met along the way, including the three of you, have just been outstanding. So it's been a great time.
Awesome.
I will. Hi, Mike. Hi, Jake. So my background has been in banking for 10 plus years and working in capital markets, working on risk solutions for corporates. After that, I founded 2 edtech products. And what fascinates me about Web3 is trying to see how it can impact education and finance. And one aspect that Mike mentioned about community, I think that is very attractive. Community and ownership, I would add to that. How we both at my startup and at several banks I worked at, we worked hard to foster community and ownership. And I feel like with DAOs and Web3, that is so intrinsic to how we start.
Agreed. Okay. So let's try. Panel discussions on podcasts can be a little difficult. So what I will do is I will just posit a question. We're on video, but 99.9% of people just listen. But the small fraction of people that are on video, the advantage of doing it with video is it's easier to tell who's actually going to say something. So I'll ask a question and just leave it open-ended. Whoever wants to pop in, and it'll become a little bit more obvious who is going to give everybody a chance to speak. But the first question I want to hit is, what is a DAO? This is not actually an easy thing to define. The deeper I get into the space, the harder it is for me to define what it is. So I'm hoping for some fresh perspective here. What is a DAO? Who wants to go first?
I can go first. I view a DAO as a way for people to organize themselves in a non-hierarchical manner, right? And enmeshed completely into the fundamental operating principles of Web 3.0. This is permissionless, trustless, and decentralized.
Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add on top of that. So if Facebook groups were a way to get everyone on the network, right? All of a sudden my mom's on it, my grandma's on it. It's not just my nerd friends. Now what DAOs are is a social network that doesn't yet have a technology platform to be on. So we're all working together trying to communicate over Discord in these different ways, but the social network is there. And so we're actually in the process right now of building out the tooling and the best practices of how we work together to build the thing we can all see, right? It's like we can see the vision. It's like at one point in time, it was oh, this is what America could end up being, right? Like we can all see the vision of oh, we can actually work together without a hierarchical structure. We don't have to work in a pyramid scheme, and it's oh, I see how this works. Like Jake and I and Priya and I are getting on calls and we're building something of value, and we know that we're going to share in that value in the future, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think as a society, we have been thinking hard about how to build flatter organizations, and DAOs are just a step in that direction.
So for my own two cents on this, and why it's getting more and more complicated for me, is because the deeper I go into it, the more I realize when people think of DAOs, they think of flat structure. They think of everybody can go in and do things, which in some DAOs is true. However, I'm noticing that there's a difference between the institution and the organization, if we were to use this dichotomy, where the institution in many ways is the bridge to fiat, right? In crypto, we have these concepts of bridges into fiat currencies, where there's sort of a financial bridge to fiat, which is a whole huge conversation, but there's also a legal recognition of an institution in a jurisdiction, and an institution, and it's a huge conversation, so we don't necessarily have to go down this too far. But I'm realizing that we can have a Delaware LLC or a Wyoming LLC or something as the institution. In fact, the institution, even more broadly, can be, we want to help train Web3 product managers, right? And we had an institution like a university or some kind of government or something that's an institution that is heading toward that direction. The organization, however, is the people. And the people, how the people organize, this organic collection of humans that are trying to do something together in an institution setting. And what's interesting about DAOs is we've had decentralized organizations for quite some time. These are co-ops, right? Lots of companies, REI, and I know a bunch of grocery stores are organized like co-ops. And what's unique about DAOs now as an organization of people is the autonomy. And I've seen discussions on Twitter that view autonomy from the frame of the individual, where we have autonomy to work in whatever work stream. It's permissionless, right? It's like, if I want to go work on the website, I'm going to go work on the website. If I want to go work on this, I'm going to go work on this. Like, I have autonomy as an individual in it, but it's also autonomy of the organization, meaning it's going to run. Like, we set up rules and it's going to go. Voting's going to happen on chain. Compensation is going to happen in a decentralized way. There's going to be transparency with regard to the treasury. The transactions are going to be done on a blockchain. It has all of these autonomous aspects to them. And so reading Alexandra Sim's PhD thesis on DAOs, which I'll link to in the show notes, she actually architects 9 different types of DAOs, which I don't think I know them off the top of my head, but it's essentially, you can be a business, you can be a club, you can be a fund treasury, all the way to a nation state. And these are different types of organizations with institutional wrappers in order to accomplish some kind of collective goal. And at bottom line, what I'm excited about DAOs is there's this spirit of coming together and building something as a collective to make the world a better place, right? Biology has this quote, win and help win. It's like, get in there, get it done, and then help each other. And my engineering / 20 years in business, starting businesses and investing in businesses brain is thinking, okay, how does this practically work? Is there a way that the magic of what's happening in the DAO space can translate to proper incentives, proper compliance, and that the nitty gritty here is what we're interested in. So we are all building BanyanDAO which we'll get into as a mechanism to do that. So, question: how are you thinking about incentives in even how we're thinking about BanyanDAO? How are we thinking? How are you thinking about this? Is this because I would hate to have a gotcha, right? I'd hate to have the gotcha where somebody's working for 3, 4, 5 months and it's like, what did I just do that for? How are you thinking about incentives?
I think about incentives in 2 separate, distinct categories. The first one is an intrinsic incentive, right? Which is, I'm getting into a brand new space and I'm going to take the mantra of learning by doing. And through that process, I'm going to become better than my former self, right? That itself, to me personally, has a lot of value. Now, in the process, as an outcome, when we create something that is also useful for the larger populace, through that process, there will be some potential rents that we could extract as a community that can then be distributed based on the amount of effort that the individual put to enable that outcome. And oh, by the way, that outcome can change over time, right? It's not static, right? Which is one of the problems with the current framing of the web, is that staticness proliferates into perpetuity. In this case, it is all outcome based and it can change. Other folks can come in, they can contribute, they can extract the rents for that particular phase, etc.
Yeah, I think there's a component of composability in it, but going back to incentives, I see it in 2 parts. There's an aspect which we might have to quantify in terms of rules, whereas like what would the contributions look like and how would the compensation look like, and it'll be transparent and versus the current opaque structure in corporates we might see. So there'll be transparency there because it'll be based on specific rules. And the second is peer-to-peer tokens or rewards. I think that component can be added on it as the second incentive structure.
I'm very motivated by being out on the edge and trying to pioneer something that's new and looks like there's interesting opportunities, right? Like, it's like, hey, let's get to that new land first, and then let's figure out what we're going to do once we get there. It's like, right now, I feel like we're getting there, right? We're getting to Mars or whatever, right? And we're just setting up, we're not dividing up the ore that's in the ground yet. We're just saying like, hey, this is an interesting place to be. I'm going to grow as an individual. For me also, community is a huge thing, right? It's been like 2 years since I got to meet new people, and I'm meeting new people and building stuff and getting challenged. But then when you also look at it, like, I've never seen a bigger like business or financial lever than this, right? Like when you look at what some of these groups are able to do using this technology, like Bored Ape Yacht Club, for instance, like they're raising money at between $4 and $5 billion, and they weren't even a company like a year ago.
Right.
Right. Like they weren't even public a year ago. And so when you look at the amount of leverage that you can get by starting out with a community, then building a product for that community, and then turning that community into the evangelists and salespeople and product people and builders, like all of a sudden you've really unlocked something very powerful and something that's it's more natural to who we are as humans than to go like apply for a job, on board for 90 days, then have like 6 years before like you become a leader in it. Like here you can lead today.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, like even for a brief history of BanyanDAO, a bunch of us, like all of us, a big community, kind of loosely connected, have been thinking about NFT clubs, have been thinking about Web3, have been thinking about DAOs and different angles with DAOs. And from my perspective, from my own little corner of it, I posted on LinkedIn, hey, everybody, it seems like there's an opportunity to specifically form a DAO to help train Web3 product managers, because there's tons of DAOs out there that are focused on the software engineers and learning protocols, learning Solidity, learning Rust, right? Learning how to build smart contracts and everything that's very much needed. Big deal. Like I'm glad these exist and I'm excited to partner with them. But what's the layer on top of it? Who are the people architecting and designing the products to bring value to humans? So I just posted the thing on LinkedIn, interviewed a few folks in the Web3 space, quickly got and was originally thinking that we would just have a few experienced Web3 product managers to lead a cohort of 10 people through an experience to train them up. But what happened is that all of you all and many other amazing product managers in the Web2 space hit me up and are like, Will, can I get in? Will, can I get in? How do I get in? And it became quickly, the Discord became unwieldy. And we voted when it hit 44 people, we voted, we have to temporarily shut this thing down to new members because we have to figure out what we're doing. And then we organized and tried to figure out what we were doing. A couple other DAOs, a couple other Discords were spun out. That got confusing to people, not only on the outside, but also on the inside. It was a good lesson that clarity of leadership, clarity of definition, clarity of how to help, clarity of governance, and clarity of incentives are very easily lost if you don't set them up and get them really dialed in. So we collectively decided, you know what, let's just merge all this back in and create one single DAO with a single project. Mike, you've been instrumental, and Jake and Priya in this process. Mike, I'm just curious from your perspective, what were you thinking through this? How did you decide to step up and get after it? What's your particular story? And then Jake and Priya, I'm going to ask you the same thing.
Yeah, so I think in my head I had that vision of like what could be. And the reality was this is a chaotic Discord channel, right? and it's like, okay, well, what are we doing, right? These people seem interesting, but like it's like you're at a cocktail party where you have no shared acquaintances, right? You're like, what do I even talk about right now? And so we kind of had this idea of let's do a forcing function, and let's say that we're going to put on an event in like 90 to 120 days, something like that. And like let's build something together, right? And so that was kind of this concept of let's learn by doing. And then that brought us like a reason to work together. And so that's what I saw is a good reason to work together.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mike. Will, when you reached out and you mentioned that this DAO is about learning and it's about, I've been building products for the last 5 years, and I was very keen on, leveraging Web3 to whether it was to bring about community ownership, access, and I just felt like it really resonated. And once I joined, the journey has been really amazing, because the mission, stepping back, was focusing on human flourishing. And I think learning is just such an important component of human flourishing and unique to humans. And I felt that this is not just about training for product managers in Web3. This is much bigger than that, and that's what's really motivated me. Mhm.
That's awesome. You know, I've when I look back upon my life, I've realized that serendipity and luck and good fortune has played a big role. So I was not even in the U.S. when I read Will's LinkedIn note. It was in the middle of the night where I was, and I was just doing a bunch of Web3 stuff by myself. And I realized I thought that I might have to conquer this mountain by myself, and that was going to be a really hard task. And then Will's email just popped in at the right time. And I said, this is a great opportunity to connect with this loosely coupled, highly aligned set of folks that are just world class in their own respect and actually make something happen. So this is not just a book club where we come in and talk about stuff.
Right.
We actually build something. And the journey has been just fascinating. It's been, it started with, okay, we got to do this. And, the rudder took us in many, many different ways. And we're trying to organize in a way where everyone is a leader at the same level. But at the same time, different folks have to step up and exhibit leadership to push and get people and nudge them to this particular outcome, right? So it's been a great experience this far.
So for those in BanyanDAO and even outside, you're welcome to come in. This is now open to the public. And we're doing our best to try to bring clarity in terms of what to do once you get in. Because I agree that especially Discord, it can be a little overwhelming and confusing, and to the point where you may not want to jump in. So maybe at some point we may have more vehicles than just Discord to communicate. And we'll be announcing those, ironically, in Discord. But we'll do our best to set up because I noticed, and I've jumped into a bunch of different DAOs Discords, and there's some similarities for how they communicate, and there's some differences. I think we can all collectively jump into different DAOs and learn from best practices. If anything, BanyanDAO, as we train product managers, they're going to create Web3 products that will probably have DAOs associated with them, and so this community of DAOs is certainly part of the vision. But I think, as Priya mentioned, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of us have seen the crypto punks and the pudgy penguins and the bored apes and the adjective animal NFT clubs that are crypto native, that are kind of fun, that are actually hinting at a pretty amazing future. But we saw the power of a community of people aligning around NFTs to get to know each other socially and to have a hope and a vision for a better future. Doesn't matter which NFT club, for some people that better future was money, right? And this is the thing in Web3 that's difficult to navigate, because now you can tokenize everything and have financial incentive, which I hope doesn't detract from the beauty of what we're trying to create. But the promise of Web3 to enable all humans to flourish, all humans to become who they are outside of oppression and different biases that are preventing people from flourishing. The goal is for us to collectively figure this out. Right? As Mike said, we're going to Mars, we're unpacking some boxes from our spaceships, and then we're trying to figure out what to do. The collective goal within BanyanDAO, and I know many, many other DAOs, is to actually help each other win. And so I'd invite the listener, anybody who's watching this, to come and join us on that journey. Unpack some boxes, step up and lead. We're practically giving each other tokens using Cohort-based, and I'll put the link in the show notes. Everybody gets it for every epoch, every season that we give tokens. Everybody gets a finite number of GIVE tokens. That's an internal token to Cohort-based. And as you're seeing people do work, you give your tokens to others. And if everybody's giving to each other, this doesn't need to equate. In fact, our attorneys have told us, don't equate it to actual dollar. Just have this be this magical token in your club that you're giving each other freely based on however you feel like giving it. That's how we're doing. As we're sitting in Mars, unpacking boxes and figuring out what to do, we're saying, oh, hey, you're doing that, cool, great. Here's a little bit of give token. You're doing that, cool. that is going to create a ledger for all of us in BanyanDAO that we are going to do something with collectively and vote on it in the future. And we will probably mirror some of the other mechanisms that other DAOs have done with different types of NFTs, different types of token models. There's, I think, a lot that we can do, and to be good students, we need to pay very close attention to what's going on outside there. But is there anything in that setup, in terms of how you're thinking about BanyanDAO and what we're trying to accomplish, that you would add to what I just said?
I would say that in the beginning, trust is something that needs to be built, right? So like if it's trustless in general, right? Like we're doing everything on the ledger, that human trust that we have right now that we're building is setting a precedent for what things are going to look like in the future. So I think right now we're in this stage where things are a bit undefined, but that means that we're building our trust, and we're going to see when it comes down to voting on everything, how much everybody's in it for the group versus themselves, right? And that's going to be, I think that's going to be a huge learning lesson, first of all. And like, I hope it goes really positively. I sure as hell want all of us to win together. That sounds great.
Yeah.
But it's definitely an experiment, right? Like we're in totally unknown territories here.
Okay.
But, and my biggest thing would be is like, if you're looking from the outside at this, it's just come and try to get involved and be part of one project, one thing, right? It's like, it's actually really fun. Like if you don't like doing work in a corporate setting, like you might actually love doing work with people that you choose to do. And it might actually give you more wind in your sail, right? I came into this new year just kind of like another year of work, and like now I'm actually excited and like messaging with Jake at night, you know, like I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
You know what's fascinating? I'm sorry, go ahead, Priya. I'll wait.
No. Yeah, I agree. It's a leap of faith, but I'm totally loving it too. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 5 years, and having that continued ownership, the choice of the people you want to work with, the choice of the projects you want to work at, it's definitely worth it.
You know, to Mike's previous point about being a pioneer, kind of view BanyanDAO as being a pioneer in the space, but with the following mindset, right? We're trying to establish that first city once we unpacked stuff, but we're going to do it in a way that it's repeatable, scalable, consistent, etc. So you can, like, you know, kind of grow the branches of the Banyan to go into different areas. So for folks that are listening or watching, this is a great opportunity to figure out how to go from 0 to 1 from a DAO perspective.
So what are the projects that you three are working on? What are the tracks that you're excited about in this current season of BanyanDAO?
Well, I think Jake said something really important there. Like when he was talking about what a banyan tree is, right? Like a banyan tree is what we're named after, and it's a type of plant that when a seed lands on another tree, it can just sprout right there, and it doesn't need roots to be in soil. The roots can be in the air, and so it actually starts to grow out of an existing tree, and it will like wrap all the way down, and it will hit the ground eventually. It'll start growing out, and then it'll put down new roots so that a whole forest might actually be a single tree. So if you think about what we're talking about with Discord and some of these like, you know, Web 2 style products, like we are literally planting ourselves into Web 2. And then we're taking our social networks that we have from Twitter and real life relationships. And there's even like full companies of people that are starting to join. And that's going to grow into something that uses this new type of technology. And you can already see it happening. Like you can see it's happening. And this is such a good metaphor. And that's why I love that the team decided to take an organic metaphor that's about building a healthy ecosystem, and it's about seeing each other flourishing. Because if we're successful in our goals, we all win. And that's what I want.
Love
you know,
that.
one of the first projects that that Priya, Mike, Will, you and I are working on is we're putting together this event that is specifically targeted at current Web 2.0 product managers and educating them about Web 3.0 and how the product management discipline is going to get radically transformed from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. So what we've been doing is we're putting together an event that's going to span either 1 or 2 days, fully digital, fully online. You can join in from wherever you are, and you get to learn from experts about specific aspects of Web 3.0 that are material to your current way of thinking as a product manager.
Yeah, I think Jake mentioned about the event. Of course, that's one of many events, but that's a great start. We're really getting to do a deep dive and think about how we want to bring the community together to add value to the product managers in the space who are in the space and who are also learning about the Web3 ecosystem. So great initiative, and we're currently working on just all the logistics around the curriculum, the event, partnerships with speakers. Yes, it's been a very exciting journey.
Do we have a date set for the event yet, or are we finalizing speakers and then finding the best date for the speakers and then set it? Is that what we're doing?
Exactly.
Great. Okay, so if you're listening and you're a product manager in a Web3 company or a Web3 DAO or a Web3 something, reach out to us. We'd love to have you join us and share wisdom with a community of product managers that are looking to level up into Web3.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I would also encourage folks that are actively looking at transitioning from Web 2.0 world into Web 3.0 world. Come in, join us. It's going to be a great event.
Mm-hmm. The project that I'm working on, it has to do with the collaboration of our team, right? Like you get this group of strangers into a Discord channel, and then you got to make something happen, right? It's a little bit of alchemy. And so a lot of what I've been thinking about is like, how do we define these projects? And then how do we make sure that there's a leader who kind of shares the vision and can help rally people around this? I've been doing a morning 8 a.m. Twitter spaces with somebody from DeveloperDAO to be talking about the best practices of how to organize ourselves so that we can start to like know the best way to do that, right? And if we're going to really embody this vision of being this growing organism, we're going to need to get really efficient at setting goals together that match our values, creating strategies that we can all win by, and then turning those into projects so people know what to do. And so all the things that go into that, we're going to have to explore. We're going to have to try things. We're going to have to, some of them are going to fail and be dumb, and some of them are going to be awesome and breakthrough, and we'll just keep growing.
So I've heard a lot of exasperation. So basically in September or October, I unfollowed all my Twitter followers and refollowed everybody in DAOs and Web3. So I don't know how many people I'm following now, but my entire Twitter feed is about DAOs and Web3. And I'm seeing a pattern the last 3-4 months of exuberance that we can all get in there and make it awesome and win, right? This idealism that a bunch of people are going to come in and then it's just magically going to work. I've seen the spectrum between that and I'm burnt out, nothing's getting done, tragedy of the commons, there's no clear leadership, it's not obvious how to get stuff done in this DAO that I'm in. How are the three of you thinking about how we are going to solve that problem, solve the tragedy of the commons problem so that we can actually get stuff done while having a flat holacracy, non-hierarchical organization? Is that even possible?
Yeah, I think I would like to answer that. I think there is going to be a transition phase. I mean, it's not two ends of the spectrum. It's going to be people in Web 2 gradually adding decentralized components to their organizations. That's already happening right now. It's not, again, there are a lot of use cases in the fundraising space, a lot of multiple use cases in the creator space where there are organizations with products, but then they have a decentralized component to it where they're issuing tokens and there are artists who are posting their work and there's a huge audience. So I think the way this will be covered in module 1 of our curriculum. So there are 4 modules. I might go a little explain the 4 modules, but the first module is where we really talk about the journey from Web 1 to Web 3. We also debate, predict, really pull apart, is this going to happen? Is this not going to happen? How is it going to happen? And then in the second module, we take a deep dive into all the components, DLT, tokens, wallets, everything Web3. And then third module, we go into what it really means for a product manager coming into the space. How does he need to think? How are product management teams going to evolve? And the final is a capstone project where you get your hands dirty and really build something in the Web3 space.
That is cool. That's actually the first time I've wrapped my head around the 4. Let me try to repeat that back. So the first one was, what is the transition from Web 1, 2, 3? Right?
Yeah.
Which is great. That is I'm just endlessly fascinated in this. I've actually interviewed on this podcast some old guard cybersecurity people that were part of the movement in Web 1. And they reflected on the idealism, and we talked about the mirroring, the rhyming between history when they were forming Web 1 and what all of us, the next generation, or the next 2 generations, have been talking about in Web 2. So so that's a cool module 1. Module 2, you said, is in the particulars. What are the wallets? What are the NFTs? That's
yes,
module 2?
Deep dive, yeah. Deep dive into Web3.
And then,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, also DAOs, all the different components.
Also DAOs, okay. And then module 3 is here's how to frame it, here's how to think about it as a product manager.
Yes.
Now that you have that foundation for module 1 and module 2, and then module 4 is the capstone project. Can you talk a little bit more about the vision for capstone? In a limited time, what is that going to look like? Or what's your thought around that?
So I think we will look at some current use cases, like we're looking at brain trust versus Upwork, and there'll be some analysis and like looking at what's happening right now and how does brain trust compare with Upwork, where brain trust is in the Web3 space and Upwork is in the Web2 space, and using that analogy to similarly give them a project that's maybe in the Web2 space, and what are they thinking and how would they build that in the Web3 space.
Is it meant to be like a hackathon to actually execute something, or is the project a research study around this? Like, what? Maybe I'm not understanding. Yeah.
It depends on the time we have.
I think it's a great idea, right? You've done the first 3 modules. Now go do, right? Learn by doing. Yeah. I'm just curious what I
think the way I'm visualizing it is that we will get them started on that weekend, and then because we want to keep the community engaged and we want to be there for them, we might do check-ins on that project to wrap up within 2 to 3 weeks.
And is the idea that maybe the day-long session would be on a Friday and then the capstone would be over a weekend kind of thing? Although obviously it's tricky with time zones all around the world, but is that roughly what we're thinking?
We're thinking Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, a Saturday, Sunday. Okay, cool.
The intent with the capstone is, okay, you've learned a bunch of theory, right? Let's put it into practice. Now, then that's a second order, whether you want to do it directly or whether you want to follow someone through the process. So let's take for an example, and Will, you've done this, purchasing an NFT, let's say using OpenSea, right? Now there's the superficial level where in order to just get into OpenSea, you got to do a bunch of stuff. You got to connect your wallet, etc. Then there's the next order, which is, okay, how do I know that the smart contract that is executing behind this NFT is legit? Okay, you don't need to go into the depths of solidity to understand that. I can show you, go look here. Here's what the total number of tokens that are associated with this particular NFT. Here's the thing that's executing. That's another way that we're thinking about capstone, is drill into the details. And we can do that for DAOs, like you said, with Coordinate, with NFTs, and to Priya's point about how do all these things come together. I mean, at the end of the day, we want the participants to leave with a solid understanding of not only the fundamentals and how it applies to them, but how can they apply it right away and crystallize their thinking.
So I do want to come back to it, though. Oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you had originally asked about the tragedy of the commons.
Yes.
And here's what I see happening is that software is eating the world, right? Like that's a phrase that's been around for a while. We saw it first with like newspapers and then music and then movies, right? Like every industry is being transformed from being a physical thing that can be controlled in a certain way to digital. And now we're seeing that happen within our financial system and within the way that we build organizations and govern them. And so right now, software is eating the financial system and government, right? And we'll see, just like everything else, like the record industry had some issues with that, right? And they fought for a while until they realized, like, hey, we need to get on board and work with this instead of against it. And so we're in that phase right now, right? And the way that I think the tragedy of the commons is going to be avoided is that when we see our planning processes as actually the core product of DAOs, because that planning and alignment process is how we all get on the same page towards the same vision. And so that's what I'm focusing on right now, is how we can all make sure that we stay on the same page. And like, instead of it being like a journey that we're on, turn it into a dance, right? Like the goal of a dance isn't to end up at a place on the floor, a different place on the floor. It's to enjoy the process. We have to make this really fun, right? Like right now you're seeing people leaving their Web2 jobs that they're getting paid like a lot of money for, to go into this new space and go have fun exploring, right? Like that's what's happening right now. And if we can actually make that process an enjoyable human to human thing where we're setting a goal and then achieving it, like that's what I want to be a part of. I'm down to make less money if I'm doing something together with my friends.
I love the dance analogy, but let me just build on something that you're saying, Mike, which is, I mean, today, Will, you explained there's a lot of chaos, right? And we're trying to get to order, right? So there'd be like a chaotic sort of a period, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And to Mike's analogy about the dance and enjoying the process is very important. I also think that the way that we'll arrive at order from this chaos is actually seeing outcomes. As a lot of these projects actually do something that's viable, to Priya's earlier point, and deploying that in specific areas, and people start realizing value, you know, these folks that have been exasperated or have been skeptical, they will start coming in. So that's one of the reasons why with BanyanDAO, we wanted to do something meaningful as an outcome and create this product management event. And of course, create the process, have fun while doing it, but have a specific outcome that we can all rally around and point to as a successful deployment of a DAO.
So it sounds like what we're going to do to avoid the tragedy of the commons is, one, we're going to get things done. Two, we are going to collectively, as fast as possible, come up with some kind of governance structure and compensation structure so that things are actually happening. And as people see it happening, it will become more obvious how we're going to pull this off. And so what's interesting about it is the four of us we are just a subset of the people that are starting and founding this DAO. Mm-hmm. And basically anybody right now can jump in and be a co-founder, right? That's probably not even the right word. You can be part of an organization that is simultaneously thinking of creative compensation models while also making sure that a core part of that compensation is not just money. It's being part of a community. It's getting things done. It's meeting new people. It's making the world a better place with the different products and services that we're trying to crank out. And even intellectually, as an academic, and I spent the first 27 years of my life in school, it's intellectually awesome to get in there and just explore and learn about this and learn about this and learn about this from just a pure knowledge perspective, which I have really enjoyed. So, okay, I think this is a great part one. Is there anything that the three of you, any final words, any last thoughts based on the things that we've talked about? Feel free to fire away, whoever's got them.
Yeah, I've got one. If you look at what happened in the United States, right? Like our history is complicated for sure, but the U.S. Chamber of Commerce set up a playbook basically for how to start a new town. When a new town started, they didn't have to start it from scratch. Like, should we have a fire department? There was a playbook. And that basically created this platform where all of these people could communicate and businesses could start from them. Nonprofits could start from them. People could move into them and spend their lives in them. And I think that's what we're talking about right now is the playbook to build new networks where we can exchange value and we can build things together. And I hope 1,000 private companies start from this and 1,000 nonprofits start from this. And people start their careers and instead of going to school, they just join up and they learn by working with people like Jake and Priya that know their stuff. You know, like you're going to learn a lot more by joining this than by going and sitting in a class.
I like that.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mike. This is specifically, I mean, BanyanDAO is going to have many initiatives, but this initiative for product managers, it's cohort-based, so learning is going to be great with a group of learners. And more importantly, once the event is over, the community still continues. It's going to be, you're going to be part of the Discord server where you can ask questions and have debates, and it's an ongoing thing.
The only thing I'll add on to this is kind of harken back to something that Will said. This is all about human flourishing and genuinely wanting to help each other out. And we do so by learning, right? Not just talking about it. So come on in, take a look at BanyanDAO. I think, you'll really enjoy what we're doing, and you'll get to work alongside some world-class folks.
Love it. Love it. All right. Final question. Where can people find the three of you online if they want to reach out individually and continue the conversation?
Go
ahead, Mike.
I'm at Mikey Anderson on Twitter.
P. Baveja on Twitter.
Jake Varghese on Twitter.
Okay, Twitter. I'm WC Little on Twitter. We'll put all the links in the show notes. Jake, Mike, Priya, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, a couple quick things before you go. Number one, I have a general newsletter where I write about technology and startups and health science and teaching people to code. And I write about a variety of different subjects that we talk about on this show. So if you go to wclittle.com, there you'll be able to subscribe, and you'll also be able to subscribe to particular topics. If you're just interested in one or a few of them, you'll be notified right when I publish new content in those areas. Number two, my partners and I at Product Ventures have a portfolio company called Startup Rocket. If you go to startuprocket.com, there you'll be able to receive coaching guides and customize an operations framework for you and your team and your advisors to be on the same page in terms of what is the appropriate next step for you and your entrepreneurial journey. And finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review anywhere that you have listened to this podcast or watched this podcast, it'd be super helpful to help those who might be interested in consuming this content as well. Thank you.